Howdy, y'all. I'm gonna share something with you today that I've only just started talking about. These are things that are so strange that I guess I've been embarrassed to even say them, but these are very real to me. And I'd like you to tell me whether or not you can relate to either of these things that I'm going to tell you. So, the title of this video is Pre-Incarnate Memory and Post-Incarnate Turbulence. So, what does it mean, first of all, to be incarnate? There are two aspects of a man, or a woman for that matter. The body and the mind. The body is a finite thing, which in time is folded and put away like an old garment. But the mind, or the spirit, or whatever you would like to call it, is eternal. And there's only one. We tend to call it by the name of God. It's what gives life to the flesh. So how do I get into this? I have had a memory my whole life that I never shared with anybody until I was, till I was like 30, 31. And I had shared it with my dad for the first time. And it was just I'm calling it a memory. It's an image that I had of my mother in a rocking chair with a baby in front of a window in a small square room. The window with the rocking chair in front of it is to the left, and across from her on the wall is the sofa. And she sat there and she rocked her baby in front of the window. I have no remembrance of my parents ever having a rocking chair, but I always had this image. And it was top down, like from the corner of the room is the perspective. And I had brought this up to my dad a few years ago. And I said, did y'all ever have a rocking chair? And he said, yeah. I said, did my mom ever rock me in the rocking chair in front of a window when I was a baby? And he said, yeah, after you were born, she would rock you in a rocking chair in front of the window. I said, was the window to the left of the door, looking at the door from inside of the house? And he said, yeah. And the sofa right here. I described it, and he said, yes, that's what our living room looked like. And that's something that your mother used to do with you. I mean, since I was a child, I had this image in my head, this third-person image. Now, speaking of being a child, when I was 5 years old, I experienced grief for the first time. I had suddenly started to, I hardly even know how to say it. I was grieved about my first person perspective, that I could no longer see myself in the third person. I had remembered observing myself from the third person, top down. And this, when I was 5, that is how I was used to seeing myself, if that makes any sense. And then suddenly, I was trapped in a first-person perspective, and I had some anxiety about it. And I didn't understand. And I didn't know nothing about God. But I remember talking to God and saying, why have you done this to me? Why have you changed my perspective? Why have you given me this first-person perspective? Why can I no longer see myself the way that my mother sees me? And I remember struggling with this thought. I mean, I don't know how long. It was at least for some days until I settled into my first-person perspective. I remember being 6 years old then and being very troubled. I remember being very troubled from this point forward. Although I have no memory of suffering any trauma when I was a child, my first difficult experience was, why has my perspective changed? And really being in this world has been a struggle for me ever since. What's amazing though is after all that I have suffered, I've come to understand that there is a spirit in me, the Spirit of God, who's given me life, who's given me understanding. He's entered me into the fire, passed me through. I spent many years there, 3 decades plus a year to be precise. And my impurities burned away, and I became conformed to his image. Now I know that. Now I know about the Holy Ghost. So what of the memory, the third-person memory of me as a baby? And what of the struggle that I had with my new first-person perspective when I was 5? I suppose, and I don't know. Look, I don't know. This is me trying to rationalize these real experiences that I do not understand. Although I'm inclined to say I do understand it now. But perhaps before the Spirit that is with me had entered into me, perhaps it observed me as a baby. It watched me and said, that is who I shall become. And it was with me until I was 5, and when it entered into me. And the perspective changed from a third person to the first person. And that's when I started dreaming. It's when my first dreams started happening, if I'm not mistaken. That's all. Have y'all experienced anything like this?